Hello and welcome everyone to one of our chip builder series where we get to focus on people building with AI. So we have a great group here that we're going to learn from, and we also have people in the audience. So what I'll do first is I always like to get people's energy up. I know it's harder through Zoom. So first thing, we're going to find the chat area and go ahead and give me, where you're calling in from and what you're drinking so we can kind of see where everybody is. So I would do, for example, Fargo and coffee so we can kind of see where people are in the world. Yeah, I haven't heard about the Brazilian coffee. Is it like super dark, Maria? Is it sort of like one of those things or what's the vibe? It's not third wave coffee?
Yeah, I have to say I absolutely love Brazil, but the coffee, yeah, it's quite dark.
That seems crazy. Yeah, because it seems like you would have it like right outside your window to grab and grind,
Exactly.
but
Maybe I need to get it fresh and not like burnt, not
yeah,
not
yeah, there
toast.
you go. You got to do it yourself. You got to do it yourself. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
we got people joining in from Chicago and New Jersey, and I'm in Fargo. People in Wisconsin, welcome, and Brazil. So we're an international crew. So one more thing. Let's go ahead and put one thing in the chat that we're hoping to learn today. So this would be a great session if you learned what, and I'm going to join in and try to think about what we need to think. How I know what I'm going to say. So go in the chat and put that in. All right. So we got people asking about how others are using AI, how nonprofits make decisions, like decision making about when to use it, use cases for other nonprofits. That's really good as well. Let's see what else would we like to make sure we cover today. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. hmm Yeah, how AI looks in action. That's a good one. Okay, yeah, good. How rolling out AI to smaller teams. I think that's really good, especially thinking about cost and integration. Feel free to drop in if there's anything else you want to learn. I'm going to be managing the chat. So anytime throughout this conversation, feel free to drop a question in. And we have a few resources that we'll share after. So I want to show you that really quickly. So first thing is we put all of our events and our roundups after on our blog, which is chip.ai/blog. This is a really great place to learn about AI. So we do a lot of tutorials and templates. And so on Tuesday, we'll publish our post about this session, and that'll include video highlights as well as any of the resources that we talk about and some of the takeaways. So that's a really good one to go back and read if it goes too fast or if you want to dive deeper. In addition, we have the Chip Academy. So this is going to be the foundation of a course that we're going to offer people for free about how nonprofits can use AI. And so you can go into the academy totally free at chip.disco.co, or you can get it on our website, and you'll see a learning path after we finish this session for AI for nonprofits. And that's where we'll be able to add lessons. So feel free to share those with colleagues and friends. And we're really excited to welcome our speakers today who are joining us, and we'll dive deeper. But Rob and Rick are founders of Growth AI Partners, and they're going to tell us a lot more about that. But I think about them as like the AI Chicago guys that are really helping nonprofits and organizations think through AI, and they're really good at, I'd say, taking their experience from corporate worlds working in larger groups and actually applying AI in a way that makes sense, right? So that's why I'm so excited to have them as chip users and as speakers today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Rob as our first speaker, and then he has a guest speaker that he will introduce that we'll learn from. So this is a little bit passing the baton, but I'm going to pass it over to Rob, and I'll be in the chat for anyone who wants to ask questions. So yeah, Rob, welcome, and thanks for sharing with us.
No, and Scott, thanks for having Rick and I on today. So really excited to talk to everybody today about some of the work that we're seeing with like local nonprofits and ministries based here in Chicago. So as I look forward to this event today, I think there was a few key topics that we wanted to jam on today, and really one of them was just really talking about how nonprofits can quickly get benefits of using AI and specifically around trips. So that's to really grow their impact. So we're super excited to talk about that today. And then from an agenda, what we thought we'd do today is really, talk about some of the main use cases that we're seeing with nonprofits. And then we're going to go into Scouting America, the Three Fires Council, which is a small nonprofit here in Chicago, really talking about their story and some of the value highlights that they achieved around it. and then we'll do some simple demoing and kind of have a simple guide to get started. So that's kind of what we're thinking our meeting goal and our agenda is today. Is that good for everybody?
Sounds awesome. Yeah, let's dive into it. Can't wait.
All right. So just to give a quick start about myself and what we do, right? So Rob Wellen, I'm one of the founders of Growth AI Partners, right? I'm also a nonprofit board member here in Chicago at one of the local Tri-Town YMCAs. I'm also on the board of the Chicago MLK Unity Breakfast, the board member there, and then also just the youth football coach as well. And then from just a little bit about Growth AI Partners right now is, we're an AI agency and our mission is really to help these community-based organizations get that competitive edge with AI. So thinking about things like scale, growth, cost reduction, right? How do you have more capacity around that is really what we specialize in this as well. And we are a CHIP certified gold partner focused in on nonprofit organizations. And really the process that we know really well is the fundraising process. So think of fundraising and how we can help. So that's just a little bit about us and what we do. Okay. All right, so then let's dive into a little bit about some common use cases that Rick and Katie and where we see the most values where nonprofits can get into AI. And there's really on that. So first, when we talk to a lot of different organizations right now around this, there's really 4 questions that they are asking, right? One is really around the idea of, everybody asking right now, like, how do I get into AI, as a nonprofit, as a leader, how do I get into AI? How do I use it, right? How do I use it to grow my impact? People talk a lot about just really enabling their team, right? And really there it's around capacity of their team and how they can do more, provide more programs, more service around that. And then really diving into around this as well. So this is kind of like what we see. I'll pause there. Does anybody else see anything when it comes to nonprofits? Are these the main questions? Anything else anybody else is seeing?
I hear a lot of people ask about security, like can I add donor data, like how much data can I share, things like that. Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? Nicole, Katie, anybody else? Rick, anything else you guys are seeing? Maria, when it comes to nonprofits and their needs?
What about monetizing it like we've been talking about with Three Fires Council?
Yeah, that's a good one. Like monetizing, like creating some kind of product service that they can sell.
Yes.
Right, to help with fundraising. That's a great one.
Yeah. Neat.
It checks 2 boxes, program delivery in most cases and fundraising.
Yep. Excellent. Anything else, Maria, Nicole, anything else you're seeing? These are the mains. I think we've talked to about, a bunch of organizations right now around this, and these are probably the 4 that come up 90-95% of the time. So there's other questions.
Rob, one I would throw out there, and I've seen this not just nonprofits, but other organizations, is that there's more AI content out there, and humans are getting better at spotting AI content and literally calling it out. Like, somebody told me that hey, this sounds really co-pilot-y. And it's kind of almost like a dig. So then the question is, how can you use AI without sounding like you're using AI? Because people still want that human touch and that human connection, which back to nonprofits is super important.
Yep.
Well, and to tag along with that, Rick, how do you make it sounded branded like your organization, like we've done?
Yes.
You know what I mean? If like you have a style guide or something like that, importing that so that everything that comes out sounds like your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are all great ones. Great ones. Any other thoughts or anything else anybody else is seeing when it comes to AI and nonprofits? Cool, Maria. Okay. So then so we get asked all the time about what are the main use cases, right? That, organizations and nonprofits really want to use AI and to get value and to grow their impact in the organization. There's really 5 that we're seeing right now. We're seeing 5 that these have been in the market, people are using today, and these are things that people are already getting ROI around. So one is around the proposal and grant writing process. And primarily the need there is around just really the drafting and editing process, so loading your data into that and really allowing your development team to scale and go faster is the big need that we're seeing right there. The other one is around, call it member, parent, customer support around that. There's a big need really to provide and answer basic like one-on-one questions around this where, if you have a limited staff, maybe they can't take every question, right? AI has come in, you can put something on your website, it can answer some basic 101, and then it also can route it towards if there's anything around larger problems or larger issues. And the cool thing about AI is that you can do it always on 24/7 and really focused in on multilingual. The third one we're seeing is around campaign and content personalization. So if you think about like, running a campaign, running an event, something like, coming up with the strategy around based upon all of your guidelines that you have is hard for a lot of nonprofits. So we see a lot of people using it to help them create the strategy and the campaign really specific to what they're doing. Fundraising support is a big one right now. So if you think of your development team, think of stewardship, right? Think of like, how do you kind of put action plans in place around your donors so you know when to call them and what to ask them for, and how do you accelerate them based upon where they're at and their needs right now. So that's a big thing we're seeing. And then the last one is around event planning. And this could be things like fundraising, creating like a cool golf event, right? Something like that where you can maximize the donations, maximize the experience around that as well. So these are the 5 that we're seeing with Chip right now. So, and where we're seeing people really kind of get value. And we have any other ones anybody else is seeing that I didn't mention here? Anything?
Rob, you and I have been talking a lot about strategic planning.
Yep.
Yeah, I always tell people like if you have 30 minutes to experiment with AI, the best way to do it is to use it as a strategy partner because there's no setup. You can just ask questions. You can kind of like get new ideas. And I actually think it's an underrated use, like you mentioned, Katie. So yeah, I think that's a really good one.
Strategic planning's a good one, yeah. Nicole, anything you guys are doing or thought about or thinking into?
No, we just kind of like we're starting out trying to use it, so just here to listen.
Okay.
And what's your work, Nicole, or organization, if you're willing to share?
It's a Party with Purpose. We're like an all volunteer-based organization, and we raise money and we donate it out to like disadvantaged children charities in Hudson County, New Jersey.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yep. So we're seeing the major areas around the fundraising process right now. That's where we see a lot of the nonprofits going. So this is all good. Yeah, strategic planning, any of that on the fundraising process is really where we see it as well. Okay. So that's what's going on in the market. That's what we're seeing right now. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll turn it over and we'll talk about Scouting America Three Fires Council. All good. All right. So I'm gonna start it off, and then first I'm gonna introduce Katie Clark right now, who has been in the industry for a long time, has been on the fundraising process side, has been on the marketing side, has done a lot of things, including Infuse AI at Scouting America right now. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna have like a little bit of back and forth around this and just have kind of like a brief interview. So feel free to jump in with any questions that you might have. So first, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself, right? Your role, company, and then what your role was at Scouting America.
Cool. My name is Katie Clark. I live in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I have worked for Boy Scouts of America, now known as Scouting America, for about 34 years. I've worked in 4 different locations all over the country, so that's given me a different view of regional habits and techniques that work. And most recently, I was at Three Fires Council in St. Charles, Illinois. And despite the fact that our AI grant writing was going very well, and we went from 80,000 to 150,000, we were in a budget crunch, and my position and 3 others were eliminated at the end of August. So I am looking for work, and I am working a lot with Rob on putting together a consulting business with another business partner of mine to help with things just like this, like nonprofit development, working from strategic planning to the whole fundraising, kind of everything from donor development, donor cultivation to stewardship plans. So that's my view there, and that's what I'm up to these days, and really just taken a few weeks off because I left my job, or they left me, or however that was phrased. I have 7 weekends in the month in the fall that I no longer have plans for. That's how much I worked weekends, and I'm just really enjoying being able to see the fall colors and go up north, northern Wisconsin, and just kind of take some time to do things like staining our deck and cleaning the house and visiting friends and family and stuff like that. So right now I'm really enjoying it and putting together together, what is it? What do you call it, Rob? A side hustle? I don't know if it's a side hustle. Maybe it's a full-time hustle, but something I'm putting together my next adventure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Katie. And thanks for being on. And I think what I like about you, Katie, you've got a very diverse background in the scouting, Boy Scouts, and kind of just seeing the whole process around that. So why don't you go in and just talk a little bit more about the Scouts of America, or Scouting America, the Three Fires Council in St. Charles, Illinois?
Sure.
Yeah, just kind of what they did, their scope. Yep.
Most everybody knows what a Boy Scout is. They picture that kid walking the old lady across the street kind of thing. And the evolution is that, we are a 115-year-old organization, and being with them for 34 years, I will always say we. My kids grew up in the scouting program. I have 2 Eagle Scout kids, and my husband's an Eagle Scout. So I will always be involved in scouting, whether I work for them or not. So I will continue to say we. But scouting is a national organization that develops character and outdoor education in youth, in young people. And they operate like a franchise. So there are about 250 councils nationwide, and each council has its own board of directors, and they follow a set of guidelines or bylaws created by the national council. So we have our own budgets, our own board of directors, and our own local flair to everything that we are quote unquote chartered or licensed to do under scouting. So that's how we had the flexibility as a local organization to figure out how we wanted to work with this. And I'll tell you how we met Rob. My boss at the time, Ron, was at a networking event and ran into Rob, and they started talking about the uses of AI. And I'm very, very impressed that Ron was able to see the future of it. He's an old soul. He's a little younger than I am, but he's an old soul. And for him to take the leap into AI really was a forward-thinking move on his part, especially for an organization that's 115 years old. We know what we're doing. We have our own ways, stuff like that. But we jumped into AI, and that's kind of how we met Rob and Rick and really got going with this grant writing thing.
Yeah, so that's great, Katie. Well, why don't you talk a little bit and dive into when we think of AI, we think of like, what is the business problem like Scouting America, Three Fires was like hoping to solve with AI, right? So I know there were some initial hypotheses. So why don't you talk about the business problem?
Yeah, the first business problem we had with it was, well, with the concept in general, was sort of privacy and what's going to be out there in the web. And it's just kind of it's kind of creepy to think that your phone tells you all that information, or that the computer tells you all that information. But the reality is, once we got into it, working with Rob and Rick, and especially building our own closed AI, it really made a difference to the conversation. It changed the landscape of the conversation with our board of directors and with our staff that were sort of tried and true in setting up problem solving for especially fundraising. And to dive in on the grant writing side was perfect. The problem is that grants take so long, and in most organizations there's never enough fundraising people. We were lucky to have 2 people, but we run in the neighborhood of a dozen different events in different scales all throughout the course of the year. So there's never a month that goes by that we don't have something that we're planning or executing or something like that. In addition, we have a fairly large, $420,000 annual campaign that's run by somebody. And then in my role, I oversaw the other development director. So that's people time, the store, the retail operation, and all of the marketing operation. So you're divided in 100,000 different ways, and you just don't have the time to sit down and really craft that message that the grant writing just takes so long, especially the research part of it. That's really important, and that's where we wanted to focus our time. But the writing part of it, we felt that was something that we could turn over, have help with grant writing, and then use the AI to help us like make that process go faster. And that's actually what the results were. The roadmap was, we started with, Rob and Rick, Growth AI, writing about 8 grants for us. We not quite there yet. I think they're still working on that for the course of the year, but we had some early success with some really great ones. And like I said earlier, we went from $80,000 secured in grants last year. And by the time this year is over, we'll be at $150,000 in grant writing. And this, whether it's the grants that Growth AI wrote for us, or the ones that, were historical that we wrote, the time that it took to write them, I mean, I literally estimate cut it in thirds, the time it took to put in a grant proposal.
That's great. Maria, do you have a question?
No, I was just applauding. It sounds great.
That's really impressive, Katie. And I'm so curious if I can just jump in with a question. Like,
yeah, go.
Can you dive deep into that third of time? Like, what did the AI do that really
Sure.
cut that down? That's so fascinating.
One of the most interesting processes of working with Growth AI was they helped us train the tool the way that they needed it. And if there was something that it wasn't doing that we needed it to do, we would send data to Rick. He could upload it into the background, and the next time we needed information, it would be there at our fingertips. So here's a very specific example. Everybody knows what a Boy Scout merit badge is, right? It's the achievement that the kid, but each one of those achievements, whether it's cooking merit badge or whether it's first aid merit badge or whether it's robotics, each one of them has skills that it teaches the kid. So when you're grant writing, you need to pull out all of those skills. You can't just say that we had this many kids earn robotic merit badge. You need to pull out the skills. And so, and I didn't get to finish this while I was there, but the next iteration for us is to be able to put a list of merit badges and the skills that we would put. For example, I created platforms. This is a little into the grant writing thing, but there were several platforms. Like the most important thing to me in grant writing, not only is who you're asking for, but is actually talking about talking about the project in a way that you don't have to create everything with it. Like you don't want to, I mean, unless you're doing this on purpose to fund, what you mostly want to do, what nonprofits mostly want to do is they want to fund their operating experience. Okay. So you have to take those core values that are the core deliverables that everybody is getting through the program. And you have to, I don't want to say monetize it, but you have to numerate it, right? You have to put it into numbers and to words that anybody can grasp. So for example, I have several organizations that have funded the Outdoor Conservation Education Youth Center that we have in Elgin, Illinois. And with that goes a whole bunch of data of how many kids get this, that, and the other merit badge. So there's sustainability, ecology, conservation, and then there's pieces and parts of every rank advancement that the kids earn. And so what we can do is we can feed all that information, like please write for me a paragraph on what kids learn by doing this, and this merit badge, and that's our next iteration we didn't quite get there yet. Rick, I'm sorry I didn't finish that with you, but we put a list of this merit badge achieves these things. But what we did do is we took all that merit badge information and we loaded it into AI. So when I ask the program to tell me how many kids got this, and this merit badge, I can actually have deliverable results that I can put in words of, we had this many kids that did sustainability, ecology, conservation, beekeeping, all of these things that we do at our camp. Does that make sense? Okay. So yes, it became very deliverable that I was able to take a question like, what is, tell us about the project. And once that project was created, it could repeat that for me on a number of different levels for multiple different proposals. So my 4 proposals that I have written for that, I mean, this year that totaled about $70,000. I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick. So that one ecology conservation type of grant writing did about $70,000. The other one that I started working on with Rick and Rob was hunger programs, like Scouting for Food is what it's called. So you take the cooking merit badge and you take all the deliverables all the way through the program about when kids have to learn about nutrition and fitness and stuff like that. And you can grab all of those results and you can write it up into Scouting for Food and deliverables under a project like that. So there's a couple different projects that we were writing under.
That's great. That's great, Katie. That's great. So grant writing on that. So what would you say, talk a little bit, like everybody in the world of AI talks about ROI, right? And value of AI, right? On that, what would you say if you had to say soft, hard, how'd you measure success? Why don't you talk about that?
Well, I mean, any board of directors will measure it on the dollars raised, right? And like I said, we almost doubled what we made the year before on it. By the time this year's over, we will have almost doubled what we made on it. The other thing is the time. Like if you take my salary and you divide it by an hourly basis, if you could possibly do that, the time that it saves us, that makes me available to do other things and makes our staff available to do other things. You put a new executive who's just starting to deliver the program on a local level in front of a machine and says, write a letter to a donor thanking them for their donation. the Grant AI tool helped us put all of our marketing stuff in there as well. And the next
Yeah.
thing you know, it's taking them 10 minutes to create the right prompt, to get out something that they can use, and then to personalize it and to send it out, versus 30 minutes of this new person going, what? And then having a supervisor read
Yeah.
it, and then having them correct it. And then, the first couple of times, that's an hour or more.
Yeah.
Versus,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, versus when you put it into the AI, all of our marketing lingo is there. All of our style guide is there. So every time you say scouting and scouts and scouters, it's always with a capital S. We don't have to go back and correct all those things. It's all the minutia that's already done for us.
No, 100%. So I heard a few things. I heard dollars, like double, like yay, high five, like that's cool, right? I think everybody would be interested in that part. I heard just time and speed to market, right? Like you could just go faster, right? Like write faster. I heard resource allocation, right? So, I heard like, your time, your team time, right? So it allowed you to kind of focus in on higher things. And then I heard just getting up to speed faster, right? For
Yeah.
new onboarding, like, cause you already
Yes.
had it trained on your diet. Like, so somebody like, is that what you're saying? Like somebody didn't have to know it, right? Where they could just jump in and like, boom, you're off and running, right? I mean, that's four kinds of ROI. Is that kind of like a way to say it?
Yeah, that was all stuff that we experienced firsthand. That was really helpful. And again, when we rolled it out, just as a matter of, process, when we rolled it out, we started with some senior managers to test it, to load it, to like, hey, Rick, can you add this to it? That kind of thing. We did that for about, what was it, almost 4 or 5 months before we rolled it out to the rest of our team to make it available for them. And it really allowed us to test it, and it allowed our senior managers to have a level of confidence in it that was true and honest. Like, hey guys, this saves so much time. I'm a believer. It allowed all of the management staff to say, I'm a true believer in this. You guys all should do this because it'll save us all time. And then younger people are adapting it quicker than some of us old folks, but it really did help with the rollout to be able to say this is, something we believe in.
That's great.
I was just going to say, Rob, I think that's one of the biggest hurdles people hit is adoption within an org. So I love how you did that, Katie. And I'm sure, Rick, you played a big role in that too, of like a phased rollout to get the buy-in. And sometimes it's top down, sometimes it's bottom up. And like knowing, I think your own organization really helps to identify the strategy there, which I know Rob and Rick you guys do a lot of work on that, not just building the box, but actually how do you get people to open it, right?
So I'm going to hop in there on that one as well. Not only did they do that, but they helped me figure out how to do that for my staff at the beginning, right? And so we said, let's start small, and they said, great. And then through the frequent check-ins, they're like, okay, is it right? And so I was able to have the confidence to roll it out to our staff. And then a little while later, after the staff had been using it for a while, Rob came in and ran us through an exercise of how are you guys using it? What do you guys need? Is there any other, adaptations for it? And we ended up working through an exercise on a whiteboard that led us to the next level of evolution. And that was what we were talking about before, a way for us to develop a monetized deliverable for it's a den leader. So it'd be the leaders of the kid programs would be able to create a subscription for this. And I hope that's one of the next iterations that they still go forward with this, but we'll be able to create a subscription for a den leader to log into so that every week when they are meeting with their kids, they don't have to start from scratch. The AI will tell them you need tape and glue and this and that, and then here's your program, and then this is what achievements are going to earn. This is what the kids actually learn, and it'll be all set up into a program for them, so they don't have to go through books and create it from scratch and think about it themselves and that kind of thing. It's all right there, making it easier for the adults that are busy working with kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And Katie, I love that one too. Like even being a football coach, right? Like we get it where it's like somebody has to step up and they just don't know what to do. Right. So I think that's another good example of like, the ROI of AI is the monetization.
Yep.
Right.
Youth leaders, you're working with a church youth group, sports, any of those would really help to have a written program for you.
There it is. So 5, we got our 5th ROI, an example of like where it's going to benefit. Yeah, I think so. So Katie, that's all great. So then talk a little bit, you've been through the cycle right now, you've got other nonprofits are going to hear this, right? Any lessons learned, like you're like, oh my gosh, right? Like this was good, this wasn't. Any lessons learned, Katie, you talk about?
The prompting. I mean, it took us a while to get to the point where Rick realized that we weren't writing prompts the right way. And then Rick was able to sit down with us and just kind of say, once we went through that with him, it was really like that aha moment when the light bulb went on. I'm like, holy crap, this is awesome. Because it was good before. But once we learned really how to do the prompts and, like to, put an attachment in or to put a link, in so that you were like, here is the full application. Here is an application that I've done in the past. Please help me create the answer to this question kind of thing. It really was more, I don't know, I felt like I got more out of it at that point because of that. How do we write prompts? And I've been with Rob every day this week. And one of the things that we've been talking about is putting together that short 5-minute video on how to do prompt writing. And I'm sure it's out there, but something from Growth AI on a closed AI circuit kind of thing would be really interesting to say, this is how you create those prompts. And then how do you, and when do you reach out to the company that you're working with, to Growth AI, to say, please add this to the background of our closed AI so that this is there all the time.
Yeah, in your feedback there, Katie, it's like to really get the value out of it, right? And to have it do right. Is that kind of what you're saying? Because I know a lot of people just go online and they ask, so is that where you're going, right? Like, so make sure you're maximizing the value out of your tools, right?
Yeah, and like I said, it worked before, but yes, you're absolutely right. It really felt like it was maximizing our output when we finally started using it the right way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's great.
And by finally, I mean, we were, in like month 2 of creation. It didn't take us 10 months to get there. It just was, beginning of the year kind of thing. But it took a few weeks. But once we finally got that, it worked really well.
I think you just said the 6th ROI, the kind of set up quickly, right? I mean, you got to deploy it quickly, right? Using Ship, right? And I think that's another advantage of that as well. No, this is great. So then one of the last questions I'll ask you, Katie, we talked about it yesterday. If you had to do one thing different, like on your journey around AI, what would you do, in this process? Now you're looking back, right?
I'm thinking about that. I think maybe the grant writing was a great place for us to start, but I'm thinking a little bit more globally, offering different places for the entry level. Like, I think one of the things that maybe we should have taken a look at are fundraising efforts strategically. Like, these are how many fundraising events. This is what the dollars are raised. Are the attendance, and feeding all that in with our annual campaign and our endowment campaign, and feeding all that in and saying, okay, strategically, what's from an analytical standpoint, what's the best way for us to capitalize? Like, where do we capitalize on what we start with first? So for us, grant writing was great, but I can see for other organizations, starting at that strategy level would be even more useful. Does that make sense? And that's not something that we would do differently, but it's just something that I see globally would be a different entry point.
Yeah, and what you're saying is, like, if you think about it, like, grant writing is an easy use case. Like, everybody kind of gets that, right? But what you're saying is like, all right, yeah, that's just one part of our fundraising process. We might have the endowment, we might have all these other bigger things. So kind of looking at that, right?
Yeah.
That entire process. Is that kind of where you're going with it, Katie? Right? And maybe like, well, the grants are cool, but man, this is like the big dollar ones over here, right? Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah, and once that was built for grants, we were able to use it for everything. Because once our marketing guide was put in and our style guide, and once it fed off of our website, so it had current events, and once it understood from scouting.org, what we were doing, we had all of these resources. And once it was built, it was so easy to do that other stuff. Yeah. So for us, starting at the grant level was great, but I'm thinking maybe starting at a different entry point would be an interesting experience.
Yeah. Great feedback, Katie. This is great. All right, this is great. Any questions for Katie while we've got her, and before we can actually show? I think we can show some of this. We'll go next into showing things. Any other questions for Katie?
No, that's awesome. Let's show it. Dive in.
All right, Katie. Any last words?
Just a matter of how easy it was to work with Rob and Rick. I mean, you don't just send something to Rick and then have to wait for a days or a week or anything for it to be uploaded into the background. It happened immediately, kind of thing. So within 24, 48 hours, you've got all of your data input and you don't have to wait on it. And then they're really good about sharing deadlines too. So if I've got a deadline of a grant coming up and I give them, a little bit of time, they know how important that is to get the data uploaded so that I can get out of the system, what I need. Every grant's a little bit different. So sometimes there were things that had to be uploaded that we were missing or hadn't thought of before. And it was just a great response from the team. They were very willing. They always followed up with us and made sure that we were happy with the product and that if there was anything else we could do to, expand what we were already doing. So I just really appreciated Rob and Rick and their willingness to be there all the time for us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, no, excited. Katie, great job by you guys as well, too. So, all right, well, what we'll do now, I think we've got a few minutes left. I think what we wanted to do now is just touch on briefly the nonprofit AI HQ, kind of what it is. And I think we want to spend, right, Rick, a few minutes just going over the demo of like Scout's tool, just kind of on how they're using it. So I think those are kind of the two. Is that good with everybody? Or do we want to go right into the demo?
Yeah, just hit the HQ a little bit because we'll send that link
Yeah.
out to everyone who registered as well as on the course so you can get it, and then quick demo, and then I think we'll be good.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So I'll dive into like a little bit about the, what is an HQ, and then I'll turn it over to Rick to do a demo. So as everybody's probably seen on the CHIP website, right, is this concept of an HQ, right, coming out. And so what is this tool, what is this tool, right? So think of like the most popular and the most used assistants that can help those nonprofits, hit on those things Katie talked about, like time, more money, get up to speed, resource allocation, speed to market, those kinds of things to support the mission. So that's the high level overview. This is the one we have right now. This is going to be coming out, I think, in next week or so, right? And it's really designed to be one-stop shop for all your AI. So like even Nicole, if you think of your organization, right, you can subscribe to this and you could have all those different parts, right? From grant writing to the campaigns to the event planning. We've got a development navigator, and then member and then donor insights are going to be included in this as well on that. So just think about that. That's a little bit of an overview. So think of these as like your in-house experts, right? Think of it as personas, that you can use for grant writing, campaigns, event planning, your development strategy, your member support, and then insights you can have for your stewardship and all your planning, right? So that's what it's designed to do. And then Katie mentioned a bunch of benefits that are coming. These are some other ones that we've seen as well. So, like what we're seeing with a lot of our nonprofits is really, this is supporting the teams. I think that's a big fear and kind of augmenting them, the productivity, right? So, get, more time, do things faster. And it's tailored to your needs, which Katie mentioned about like, it gets up to speed quicker, right? It provides that governance and control. So it's already trained on your stuff as well. And then we're also seeing it's allowing people to do more with keeping their expenses down as well too. So just a brief overview about the nonprofit AI HQ. So Rick, I'll turn it to you.
Sure. Rob, could you stop sharing and then I'll switch to my screen?
Go.
Got it. There we are. Share. Okay, here. All right, so as Rob mentioned, the Nonprofit HQ, this is, I'd like to consider as kind of like a one-stop shop with all of the most in-demand AI assistance for a nonprofit organization. And we put this together because we've talked with dozens of different organizations over the past year, and we kept hearing the same types of use cases. So people looking for help in grant writing and developing marketing campaigns, event planning, donor insights, and analysis. So we decided to use CHIP's HQ functionality and put those different assistants all in one spot. And so, therefore, kind of obviously, it's the nonprofit HQ. And, we like to think of this as these are assistants that will help any organization, whether it's literally a one-person shop or if it's a global organization with thousands of employees and members, can really scale up or down like that. And so, we've built this on common best practices that you see across different types of nonprofit organizations as well. Rob mentioned a few that he's worked with. I've worked with literally hundreds of nonprofits over the course of my career, and these are a lot of the same functions. And so, I'll just click on a few of these so you can get a little flavor for how they operate. So say you're planning an event. You go into your event planner here, and it prompts you with kind of 4 different paths you can go down. So is this a new in-person event? It's a new online event. We're repeating event we posted before, or we're planning our next board meeting. And so if you just click on one, say we're going to do this online event, it'll say, okay, well, what are your strategy and goals? And it takes you from the strategic level down into the more tactical aspects of, okay, if this is an online event, is it going to be, how are people going to register for it? Is it free? Are you offering any sort of CE credit? How are you going to communicate to people? And so to go through, let's say, an online webinar for CE credit, I'm keeping it very generic here. So it's going to say, okay, great. Now what's the next information that I need to know? So it'll walk you through the steps of the process. And then when you're done, it will give you a task sheet and a project plan. You can download it into Excel or Google Sheets, and then use that as your punch list for creating and executing the actual event. And so we've got marketing campaigns in here as well. And so you're wanting to put together a marketing campaign. Also, we talked extensively about Three Fires Council. This is their grant writer tool. And so I'm just going to be friendly. It's like, hi, don't even give it a prompt, but it knows, hey, you're probably here to write a grant, right? Yeah, I want to write a grant. And so it'll say, cool, let's get started. Who's funding the grant? It's like I've done this enough times. I could probably tell you what the outputs are gonna be, but it walks you through the process of developing a grant, because as Katie said, it takes a lot of time. There's a lot of content that goes into a grant. A grant sometimes can be 10+ pages of material. What we've done with Three Fires and what we do with these HQ tools is we pre-train it. So each of these things are loaded with your content. So examples of your past grants, you put in your branding and your style guide, your 990, and then that becomes part of your own nonprofit HQ's brain, if you will. So then as you're developing materials, as you're working with the assistants, they're trained on your knowledge. And so they're going to look to your knowledge first to pull information, put content together. If it doesn't find it, it can then go out to a larger LLM and seek to augment that knowledge there. One additional benefit of working with Chip is that you can choose between different LLMs as well. And this is really important, because depending upon the type of work that you're doing and even the type of voice that you want to have as an organization, you might find that Claude versus GPT 4.0 is a better fit for you. And so that's one of the advantages of working with Chip, in addition to the security, in addition to the personalization there. So that's really it in a nutshell. If anybody wants to go deeper dive into any particular part of the HQ or the assistance, happy to do that in another session.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, we'll add this into the course that everyone will get emailed, as well as a link to it. And what's powerful, I think, about this is you can use it, out of the box, but you can also customize this to your own org. And so this is really just the start. So yeah, Rob, if you have any kind of final thoughts you want to leave us with, this was really great to see it in action, see an actual use case, kind of hear how people are using it. There's a lot of demos that are really flashy and cool, but actually seeing how it moves the needle for something like earning money for a nonprofit is really helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have been waiting, right, for the ROI, like what's the ROI? And I think by, Katie and their example, right, of like investing a little bit, they've gotten a big thing. And it's not just money, right? It's resource, it's time, right? It's, getting people onboarded quicker, right? So there's a bunch, I think the key thing I would leave is there's lots of value to doing it, other than just the money around that. So so great stuff. So thanks, Katie. Thanks, everybody. So I think where we wanted to go and where we want to finish here is, for those that are interested right now, this is going to be launched next week. So we're excited, right? Yay, right? The Nonprofit AI HQ will be launched next week. We're going to do some cool testing this week with some early adopters on that. So if anybody is interested in being an early adopter, right, we're going to be kicking this off next week on that. So lots of benefits, lots of things that you get from doing that. So if you are interested in learning more about the Nonprofit AI HQ, or if you've got a very specific need you have, feel free to sign up today, by next week, and we can get you going on this as well. So that's all I had. I think that's all we had, right? I think that's all we're
amazing.
covering.
Yeah. Thanks for being here, Katie, Rob, and Rick. Always a pleasure. And we look forward to seeing everyone in the the next session. If you want to stick around, we have friends joining us in the next 10 minutes. We're going to be doing vibe coding with Replit. And what else are we using? I don't even know the other tool that we're using.
Lovable, right? Yeah, lovable.
Okay, so yeah, stick around if you want. Otherwise, feel free to jump off, Katie. Great work, and amazing to see what you've built. And I look forward to seeing back and ideas. So we'll send questions your way, and we'll send resources to everybody. And have a great day.
Thanks
Yep.
all.
Thanks for your
Thanks,
time. Thanks,
everybody.
Katie. Thanks, everybody.